Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, Sarah Cowgill, Scott Cosenza, and Tim Donner. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, let's get ready to rumble. The Kamala Harris effect. The Veep is accused of bullying. Imagine that. Supreme Court rules in favor of cussing cheerleader. This is actually a win for free speech, folks, that you won't want to miss. Don't mess with Texas. It's the state that's taking the bull by the horns while the feds turn a blind eye. And finally, we'll play around in our kicker segment today with our bi-weekly Bonehead Awards. So many contestants, folks, so little time. All this and more coming up in this edition of the Conservative Five. The granddaughter of legendary jazz singer and civil rights activist Nina Simone has had enough of Kamala Harris to last a lifetime. Speaking out this week, Rihanna Simone Kelly accused the Veep of intentionally causing her family to lose control of the Simone estate and handing it over to, quote, white folks. The feud has added fuel to the rising depiction of Harris as a bully with a mean girl syndrome a mile wide. The Simone saga popped up after Harris had a set-to with two reporters, one from Univision, not exactly an enemy, and Lester Holt of NBC. Are we beginning to see the true colors of Kamala Harris, or are these events the exception to the rule? Apparently, the Simone estate situation got so bad that the daughter of the High Priestess of Soul considered suicide. Jeff, I'm personally a fan of Simone's music, but the story connecting her estate with Kamala Harris is quite the tawdry tale. Is Kamala just a mean girl in a tailored suit? And what about the political implications this will have for her?
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, right? I mean, even when I read the story, it's hard to discern what's true and what's not true. Now, here's the thing. I don't think anybody would put it past Kamala Harris to do something like this. This is the same person who laughed about, threatening parents with jail if their children skip school. Same person who laughed about locking people up for marijuana offenses. So I don't know if more information is going to come out about this. I'm very interested to see what happens. I do think that the media is going to try to cover this up, though. So I'm going to be a little bit pessimistic because I don't think that this is really going to get a whole lot of legs, even if more information does come out showing that Kamala Harris did exactly what she's being accused of. Right now, the media is trying to protect this administration as much as they possibly can. So I think that this might not damage her politically all that much.
Is there some issue where Kamala Harris doesn't laugh when presented with something? It seems like it's like a psychosomatic response.
It's just that she always laughs at the wrong time in an awkward way.
There's a reason I call her Black Hillary.
I think she may be surpassing Hillary.
Hillary's more black. Hillary carries the hot sauce, Jeff. We know this.
Oh, right.
She is just the most unlikable person. I don't care whether you're black or white. She never got off the ground with her own campaign, despite all the adulation that she received at the beginning. She's the darling of white, suburban, progressive women who can feel good about themselves by telling their fellow newly woke neighbors how woke they are because they just love Kamala Harris, but nobody else likes her. She's also incompetent.
I can only imagine.
Tell us how you really feel, Tim.
She's way over her head. It's obvious at the border. Everybody can see it.
Sarah.
Yes. Well, I can imagine, when Biden was doing the face palms for picking, or not Biden, but Obama was doing the face palms for picking Biden. I have a feeling in his coherent moments, President Biden is doing the same thing. Like, what the heck? 5 or 10 minutes a day, coherent moments, but still, they can't be happy with her performance whatsoever. She's weird.
Well, there's one caveat there, Sarah. They may be happy that they're paying attention to Kamala's gaffes and incompetence rather than the president's gaffes and incompetence. So
there's so much to choose from in this administration.
Yeah.
Well, somebody brought something up. I would love to see Kamala Harris's numbers among Black women. In other words, is she really popular with that demographic?
Black women are more likely to like Kamala Harris. I wouldn't say that the majority do, although that's possible. She does horribly among black men. Black men do not like her for good reason. Look at who she was locking up.
Bougie black women. That's her marketplace. The brunchy bougie class. That's about it.
Beyond
Bougie black women,
white progressive women.
Yes, of course, Tim. Certainly,
because it's those suburban. I mean, she was picked strictly to appeal to those suburban white women who thought Donald Trump was just icky.
Jeff, finish your thought there.
Yeah, what's funny, though, is that, I know Biden wanted to have a black woman as vice president, or at least the people pressuring him wanted to have a black woman. There were plenty of others to choose from, honestly. I mean, Val Demings comes to mind. She would have handled this position much better than Kamala Harris. She's just, again, she's not good at what she does. She can't even spin what she does. She's not even a good salesperson for what her agenda is. I mean, she went down to Guatemala, Mexico. She messed that whole thing up. Nobody takes her seriously. And I suspect that even among Democrats, they don't even take her seriously. So this was an interesting choice. And I get that he did it to appeal mostly to white progressive women, but there were other choices out there. I still don't understand this pick.
Every failure that she has is just more evidence of institutional racism stacked against her. It's not about her poor performance.
True. Yeah.
I really wonder if they didn't put her in a position to fail. Exactly what one of you implied earlier, because is Kamala Harris someone that's going to be able seriously to fix the so-called root causes of the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador? She goes down there, ignores the border, and then says she's going to get to the root causes of why people leave these countries. Does anybody believe that she can make any kind of difference other than offering huge amounts of foreign aid in return for just keeping people inside their borders and not sending them to Mexico to cross the border from Mexico to the U.S.? It's just
I don't think this has anything to do with if she can get to the root cause. I think it is just killing time until we see Biden go away. They're just keeping her busy running around, and they're trying to keep her one issue so she won't say stupid things.
Jeff, you brought up something interesting. You call her the Black Hillary, but when you think about it, Hillary Clinton had a real likability problem. I mean, that was, people just didn't like her. And when she went out into crowds, she always looked like she was having to deal with the huddled masses. And there was a sense around her that she just didn't like people. I mean, you compare that with Donald Trump, who feeds off of and enjoys, you can be a guy in a cowboy hat that comes up to Donald Trump and he's ready to take you out for a steak dinner.
Yeah, that is the precise reason why I call her Black Hillary. That's the only reason, because they have the same likability factor. They're both awkward when speaking to regular people. They both laugh at inopportune moments. I mean, they don't really have that what's the word I'm looking for? Charisma. I mean, there's a reason why Barack Obama beat her. Obama had charisma. He still has charisma. Hillary Clinton has no charisma. Nobody likes her. Same with Kamala Harris. So that she was always, I understood why they chose her, but I still think it was strange that they didn't choose somebody else who could do the same thing that Kamala Harris is doing, but be more competent at it and be more personable.
I'm about to do something I never thought I would do, which is to defend Hillary Clinton. I mean, look, she's not likable. Everybody knows that. But she won the most popular votes in a general election. She won, 63 million votes? Do you think Kamala Harris could win those? She couldn't even make it not into or past, but not even, she couldn't even make it to the first primary, first contest in the Democratic 2020 presidential primary. She couldn't even make it there. She had to drop out before January. So, yeah, Hillary Clinton was unlikable, but she put together a serious career at least and attracted 63 million votes. So I think it's I never thought I'd defend Hillary Clinton, but her unlikability, so to speak, pales in comparison to Kamala Harris.
The only reason Hillary Clinton got as far as she did was because her name is Clinton. Everybody remembers Bill Clinton. They kind of liked Bill Clinton, even though he was kind of a, affable guy, but and a decent president. Okay, don't shoot me for that one, but
yeah, I'm going to
Harris.
I can't agree to stand in silence when you just called Bill Clinton a decent president. Excuse me. That's unacceptable. He's horrible president. What charismatic to be sure, just like Obama, both two horrible charismatic presidents.
I see a food fight coming.
All right, Sarah, finish your point.
My point is Kamala Harris has no name ID. I mean, they just plucked her out because she was an attractive woman of color. Her career was, her presidential race was, the only thing she added was attractiveness to the ticket. Youth.
I'll tell you what, though, that attractiveness was not on display when she made that big speech. She made that big speech about root causes. She looked drawn. She looked pale. She looked uncomfortable. I don't think she's the Peter principle. She's reached her level of incompetence, though some would say maybe she reached it before, but she certainly did reach it as vice president of the United States. It could be that Joe Biden's people are trying to isolate her and to make her a sort of a separate bucket from Biden so that she can be given all the difficult tasks, knowing that if she fails, it's on her rather than on Biden.
All right.
Well, who the heck is going to run the country then? If they're hiding Biden and they're hiding Harris and Biden's always hiding, who the heck is supposed to be running this country? Nobody seems to see that there's a lack of continuity and leadership here.
Are you saying there's a stick figure in the Oval Office?
That's your words, not mine.
All right. We started with you, Jeff, and I'm going to give you the last word. We've got to get out.
I'm just thinking, when Biden does step down, because I still don't think he's going to make it through his first term, it'll be interesting to see how Kamala Harris handles press conferences. That's going to be entertaining because we already see Biden gaffing all over the place. Can you imagine Kamala Harris just laughing through all these press conferences whenever she's asked a question? That's going to be beautiful.
Well, it's entirely possible Kamala Harris will keep us entertained as remnants of her past pop up like whack-a-mole. One way or another, Ms. Harris should consider losing the mean girl characterization if she ever wants to run for prez. Thanks, panel. It was 8-1 for free speech at the Supreme Court, with Justice Clarence Thomas as the lone dissenter in whether a cheerleader who sent a vulgar Snapchat could be punished by the school. 14-year-old Brandy Levy had a meltdown on Snapchat. Her school saw it and cut her from the cheerleading squad. Did they violate her free speech rights? The Supremes say yes. It appears the Supreme Court came to the rescue of Ms. Levy. Shocked, surprised, or par for the course? Here with all the skinny on the court is our own legal eagle, Scott Cosenza, Esquire. Enlighten us, Scott.
I would say buoyant, Lisa, is the proper mood for people who respect and honor and depend on our free speech rights. The Mahoney Area School District in Pennsylvania thought that the appropriate punishment for Brandy Levy for sending a expletive-laden Snapchat to her friends, by the way, not to school officials or to the community writ large, to her friends, was that she not only continue to not be on the varsity team, but for the following year, they're just going to cut her from the junior varsity squad as well. This thing for, honestly, I just have flashbacks to my own high school career, as they say. And just, I wouldn't let these people park my car, much less handle the affairs of a child. Can you imagine? This is how important it is to her. They think that's a good punishment. So anyway, the Snapchat that she made was filmed off school grounds, and then she hit the send button while she was off school grounds as well to her friends. So this wasn't a school activity. or speech made on school grounds, which might have been relevant to the decision. The school thought that they could police her speech 24 hours a day. That's the implication of their argument. They got her while she's on campus, and when she's off campus, she doesn't have free speech either. I think it is really the only the only acceptable judgment in this case was to say that it's free speech. I'm seldom disappointed in Justice Thomas, but I am in this instance, and I think it's a great win for free speech that students can talk freely when they're off campus to their friends.
Jeff.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised to hear that Clarence Thomas dissented from this. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, when we were younger, we talked trash about our teachers all the time. It happened on and off campus, but it would be unimaginable that I could say something in high school that I talked to my friends about when we're hanging out, at the arcade or whatever we were doing, and having the school being able to police us for that or be able to retaliate, because this came up as retaliation to me. So the fact that we're in a social media age right now doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't change it. Whether or not what she said was right or wrong, the school should not have the right to crack down on her and to punish her and retaliate against her because she insulted a coach or what have you.
I can't even put my legal analysis hat on this, Jeff, because I agree with you 100%. And I just get like this rage of anger against these school officials who are trying to destroy the life. This 16-year-old girl, this cheerleading means everything to her. And so she's had one 30-minute or 30-second spout off cursing them. And this is how they were. I mean, honestly, it's like everything I hate about government schools. It's totally unacceptable.
All right. Next, we have to go to the only person on C5 who has been a cheerleader. Sarah?
Is that me?
Well, I wasn't.
You.
I was never a cheerleader.
Okay, I would have been. I did some stupid things in high school, and I was booted off the squad at one time for like a couple of days. But that's a whole nother story, and I'm not going to go into it. However,
oh wait, we want details.
You have to check the statute of limitations first.
We're going to keep pressing you for the details until you provide them.
Yeah.
Details, please.
Let's stay on point today, guys. Let's stay on point. Okay.
We're on this point.
Yeah, no, it was temporary. It was a gross misunderstanding.
All right. So they suspended you for a little bit, but what's your take on?
This is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. What you do outside of the school property is your own. If your parents want to punish you, take away your phone or your, car or your walkie-talkie, I don't know, whatever. If your parents want to do and force you to go, hey, why don't you apologize, or otherwise you're grounded for the rest of your life, that's fine. That's fine. That's an internal family thing. But when it comes to the school overreach of going outside the lines, and the lines are when you're on school property, you follow the rules. When you're off of school property, you can drop the F-bomb and scream and yell all you want. And if your parents don't like that, that's the only authority you should have to answer to.
This is a follow-on to a case 51 years ago, 1969, which Scott's familiar with, Tinker versus Des Moines, which had the Supreme Court allowing students to wear black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. And their ruling was that students had not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. But disruptive speech, at least on school grounds, could be punished according to that court decision. This is a natural follow-on to it, saying, now, in the age of social media, which didn't exist when Tinker versus Des Moines went down, in the age of social media, what you put on there is now subject to everybody seeing it, things that they never could see or hear when we were in school. So what the court is doing, it seems to me, is providing the same protection in the era of social media that it did before that era in 1969.
Well, Levy's free speech case is only one of many decisions released by the High Court this week. Another interesting one is about the NCAA, but we are out of time. So surf on over to libertynation.com where we have all you need to know about all the case.
Lisa, let me get the last word in and say the real villain in this case is the narc friend of Ms. Brandy Levy. This Snapchat was supposed to be deleted automatically after 24 hours. Her friend captured it and narked her out, showing it to school officials. We would never even have it except for that. So
are we in the age of social media? We're also in the age of screenshots.
Yeah, snitches get stitches in my world.
They sure do.
All righty, guys. Thank you, Scott, and thank you to the rest of our panel. It seems that one state in the union has decided to throw it down and let it rip on issues that affect their citizens. Surprised to hear it's Texas? Lone Star State is going to finish Donald Trump's big, beautiful wall and tackle human trafficking, something no one else seems to be addressing in the swamp. It appears Governor Greg Abbott is making headlines and putting his cowboy boot down on anyone who would mess with Texas. So I'd like to start this discussion with our senior political analyst, Tim Donner. It appears Abbott is taking an in-your-face stance with the Biden folks. What do you think, Tim?
I think it's notable that the governors of the two most important Republican states are rising fast, Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott. Though Abbott, I have to say, finished nowhere among the top candidates in a recent straw poll at the Western Conservative Summit, something that Jeff wrote about me as well. But he's never hinted at presidential aspirations, but I'm sure that the moves he's making to continue building the wall, which was, of course, the signature proposal, the signature project of Donald Trump, has made him extremely popular in MAGA country, to say the least. Now, while he's never hinted at presidential aspirations, he's never rejected such a thought either. But it's interesting to note, while Abbott wasn't among the top 5 finishers in that Western Conservative Summit straw poll, which is essentially a beauty contest. It has no significant meaning in the long run. But the top 5 finishers in that were all MAGA friendly, all pro-Trump, essentially type of candidates. Also notable that Nikki Haley finished 13th. And the reason I say that is because she's considered maybe the lone hope of the old GOP neoconservative establishment, and her candidacy, if she ever had thoughts of it, is obviously going nowhere. And what that means is that Liz Cheney and company have been steamrolled into oblivion, while Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis, and the other MAGA-friendly candidates are at the head of the list.
All right, what do you make of that, Sarah?
I don't know. Maybe Abbott's simply looking for a step up on a ticket in a big way. I mean, it doesn't have to be he has presidential aspirations. It could be he has other aspirations. And what I do know is that he is taking MAGA country and going, pedal to the metal with this. It's obvious if like I just drove through Texas, mostly the state, and they love him there, and they are promoting his policies, and they're cheering him on. There are billboards all over the place saying, look what we do because we care and we're going to take care of this problem. It's quite a phenomenon down there. And I don't think, maybe he's just being a good governor, or maybe he's looking for a loftier perch. I don't think he's got presidential aspirations. I think he might want to be a number 2 guy and work his way up that way, or he might even want to look at other, cabinet kind of positions. I'm not sure.
Trump,
Sarah,
DeSantis.
one second, Tim. Sarah, I'm going to follow this up because you were saying you just drove through Texas, and you also saw a lot of human trafficking signs or what's going on in Texas about?
Well, let's remember when President Trump was in office, he talked about trafficking. He talked about the kids at the border. He talked about the the big holes. Everybody else was glossing over that in the Democratic Party, saying, let everybody in, you know, these poor people, this is what we're all about. President Trump focused a lot on trafficking. Well, Texas is also focused on trafficking. And I went through the I-40 corridor, and that's east-west. And that is a major highway and it's out in the, you know, I mean, there's not a lot of roads or not a lot of towns in this part of the world. And it's a major trafficking highway. All your trucks are running, you know, you see random things that make you go, thinking about who's in that car with those kids, why that doesn't,
You're talking about human trafficking, right?
I'm talking about human trafficking. And every road stop, every bathroom, every place on I-40, not in the towns, not offshoots, every place on I-40 that you'd walk into, in the stalls were advertising. If you've got a problem, here's what you do. Here's your tips to get out of it. Here's what you can do. Here's the code where you can say, I mean, they had it all over, and they're really making an effort everywhere you went in a hotel room. They were looking at IDs. They were asking where you're from, where you're going, who's in your party. They're definitely on top of this. Every other state that I went through, nothing.
Is there any evidence to indicate the efforts in Texas are bearing fruit with respect to trafficking issues?
Do what?
Is there any indication that the efforts that you've described in Texas regarding trafficking is bearing some fruit?
I just noticed it. I haven't, and I was thinking about digging into it a little bit more, since I seem to know some people in the area that I can, you know, get some information out of, or just go straight to the governor's office itself. I hadn't done that yet. It literally was just on the roads to and from that I noticed there were only in the state of Texas were people trying to identify and help and secure and give you the information you needed if you were A, being trafficked, or B, thought, you know, see something, say something. So I really thought that was interesting. No other state has that in their you know, rest stops. Missouri didn't have it. Arkansas didn't have it.
Jeff is the only one here who actually lives in Texas. So we're going to go.
Yeah, human trafficking is a huge problem in the state. So I'm not surprised to hear what you're talking about, Sarah. I'm not surprised at all. And as far as numbers that Scott brought up, when I looked into this probably a year or two ago, it seemed like it was starting to bear some fruit, but I haven't looked at it recently. A lot of the programs that they're putting into place are fairly new. So I expect that it's going to do something. I just don't know how much it's going to do. But yeah, human trafficking, it's all across the country, but especially in border states like Texas, it's I hate to use the word rampant, but that it's borderline rampant. I mean, it's so bad that, I mean, people could be living next to a slave and not even knowing it. And most people aren't aware of human trafficking. They think that it's just something that happens in other countries and that it only happens a little bit here. And that's why it's so important for organizations that are increasing awareness to be more showcased, because this is a huge and serious problem in the United States in general. So I'm glad to see more people out there making people aware of how extensive the issue is.
You know, we talked about this for Jeff and I talked about this for a little while last week on The Uprising, a podcast of LibertyNation.com. And one of the things that I didn't get to mention to Jeff in that conversation, I do want to say now, is this is like such a hot topic that prosecutors and police get a lot of juice from talking about human trafficking and describing their efforts against it. So while I don't know anything about what the numbers in Texas indicate, I do know that time after time after time, I see prosecutors on podiums with TV cameras around them talking about human trafficking. And then when it comes time to charge people, there's no trafficking charge whatsoever. This is like the Robert Kraft situation, you may recall, in Florida, where he was, at the massage parlor with the Chinese immigrant. They were talking about that like it was a human slave ring. Meanwhile, it was some 45-year-old Chinese immigrant who had been in this country for 20 years and owned, quite a bit of property, who's not trafficked at all. And there was no charge that was actually brought. So I was kind of forever skeptical about those charges or those allegations without charges to accompany them.
The problem is that you've got 3 states, Texas, Arizona, and California in particular, that are subject to illegal immigration. And they can't really control it themselves because immigration is a federal issue. So they're at the mercy of the federal government to a large extent. And this is the frustration of Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, and the citizens of Texas, that they can't just take complete charge of the situation themselves because they're so subject to federal regulations and the federal policies promoted by the Biden administration.
It's always such a disappointment for these executives that they can't take complete control themselves.
Well, and the other issue too that a lot of people don't know about is that we talk a lot about human trafficking coming from the border, which that makes up a huge chunk of it. But a lot of kids who are trafficked and people who are trafficked, they're Americans. I mean, they recently just busted up a ring in the Bay Area in California, because California has a lot of trafficking issues as well. And they were essentially running a brothel with children. And a lot of these are Americans. So it's all across the board. And I agree with what you said, Scott. I mean, I think that there are a lot of people who are kind of virtue signaling with this, but not really cracking down. But I know in some areas they are. So it's just a matter of, I mean, it is a federal issue, but it's also a state issue and a local issue as well. And a lot of times the local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies will collaborate to break up a lot of these rings that are going on.
Okay, well, let me just make a point about this. Texas I-40 corridor, and I-40 runs east-west. It's a big area, and that's where a lot of these people are getting on and off. But once you got out of Texas, for instance, I-40 in New Mexico, problems with the Native Americans that live there. And I'm not saying they're trafficking people. I'm saying they're victims of trafficking. For instance, you go to Stanley, New Mexico on I-40 and stop at the Pilot Rest Stop or whichever one it is there. I don't remember. That's where Jeffrey Epstein had Zorro Ranch. You don't see squat about trafficking there. Why not? Wouldn't they want to be, oh my gosh, we got to get a handle on this. We had to have Jeffrey Epstein and a 25,000 square foot trafficking ranch. New Mexico. What the heck?
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. One thing is for certain, Texas is taking a leading role in getting a few things straightened out. Illegal immigration is costing this country big, and it's just gone off the charts since Joe Biden took office. And really, if the Biden administration and the so-called border czar, Kamala Harris, won't even visit the state, much less do anything about it, I say God bless Texas. Every now and again, the C5 panel likes to leave the weighty analysis behind and simply have a romp in the swamp and call out the crazies. It's fun and downright cathartic at times. So we got a few bonehead picks to amuse you today. Now, we are a competitive bunch. So let's see who's got the best of the weirdest, wonkiest, boniest boneheads of the week. All right, let's start with Mr. Charles down in Texas. What do you got for us, Jeff?
Yeah, so this video shows yet another situation in which President Joe Biden doesn't know how to answer a simple question. This time it was about Russian President Vladimir Putin.
In a weekend interview, Vladimir Putin laughed at the suggestion that you had called him a killer. Is that still your belief, sir, that he is a killer? And I'll continue the trend if you don't mind of asking a second question. Do you believe if he does agree to cooperate, then what kind of a challenge do you find yourself in? How would you ever trust him? And if Ronald Reagan said trust but verify, what do you say to Vladimir Putin?
To answer the first question, I'm laughing too. They actually, well, look, I mean, he has made clear that the answer is, I believe he has in the past essentially acknowledged that he was, there are certain things that he would do or did do. But look, when I was asked that question on air, I answered it honestly. But it's not much of a, I don't think it matters a whole lot in terms of this next meeting we're about to have.
when I saw that clip, like I was disturbed for two reasons. One,
just two.
Well, doesn't the patriotism just overwhelm you when you hear it? I mean, the fondness for the man himself. I want to drive down to the White House right now with an American flag and just sing the Star Spangled Banner in honor.
I was so embarrassed for our country. I'm like, that was an embarrassment. I was even embarrassed for him. I felt bad for Biden. I'm like, why is this guy in this position? I felt embarrassed. And actually, I felt sorry for our president because he couldn't even articulate a response about Vladimir Putin being a killer. It was just, how did this guy get in office, and why do people continue to prop him up? And why does anybody actually think he's going to make it through his whole entire first term? This is not like a normal guy here. He's too old for this job.
He couldn't stand at a dual press conference with Putin, and it gave Putin the ability to just say whatever he wanted, uncontested, because he knew that Joe Biden wasn't up to contesting it.
Okay, let me just say, this cannot be our boneheaded comment of the week. It's pitiful. I mean, it's a crawl under the pew moment. It is so sad.
It's not even necessarily that it's Biden the bonehead. It's the Biden handlers and the wife. And,
excuse me, it's Dr. Sarah.
It's Dr. Joe Biden.
Dr. Biden.
Sorry, I don't have to say that.
Please, Sarah.
That's the new rule. That's federal law now. You have to say
it.
I'm not saying it.
All right.
Not saying it.
All right, let's move on to Sarah, since she's so argumentative today, which is why we love her.
Is this any other day? I mean, have you met me?
It's a day that ends in Y, right?
All right, let's
pretty much.
Okay, well, there was a couple of things in my mind. I couldn't find the clip of Kamala Harris addressing the press corps, handing out cookies of her face and asking them, "Don't you want to eat my face?" There was no video of that. So I settled on our president again, and this mortifies me.
I'll take your questions, and as usual, folks, they gave me a list of the people I'm going to call on. So, Jonathan, Associated Press.
Thank you, sir. U.S. intelligence has said that Russia tried to interfere in the last two presidential elections and that Russia groups are behind hacks like...
Well, what makes this so horrifying, it's almost like he was reading the prompts on the teleprompter, is that he's telling the press corps, hey, I only got a list of people I can answer questions to. It's telling the American people I have answers to the questions I know I'm going to get from the press corps. That is inherently wrong.
It pulls the curtain back on Oz. It's who's handling him, who's authorizing who to get the questions and who's get to get the answers. It's not Joe Biden. So no. I think it is a total bonehead.
I fear that if we looked at those, they'd be like illustrative panels, like,
Right. Picture the guy's face with an AP badge rather than his name.
Well, this is what you get from somebody who's been in the DC swamp for 50 years, give or take. I mean, we
have the benefit of all that experience and leadership, Tim, guiding us. It's a comfort, really.
Yeah, but the true boneheads here are the media. There's a reason why I call them the activist media. They should be calling this out. They should not. There is absolutely no world in which they should allow a president to do that and not say anything about it. This says a lot more about our fourth estate than about anybody else. The fact that they won't even bother to utter an unkind word about President Biden for doing this.
Can you imagine if it was Donald Trump and he just only called on a couple conservative outlets? What would the headlines would run for weeks about it?
I mean, Barack Obama had contempt for the press corps because they were so phony. He basically had no respect for them because they saw him as always this first black president and we're going to lift him up. And, Joe Biden, he's a product of the Washington swamp and of the Obama administration. You put the two of them together and you get stuff like that.
All right. Next, we're going with Tim.
Critical race theory has now become mainstream in academia and on the left. And it's become the new hot button issue of our time. And it exploded just near where we are now. in the Loudoun County School Board, and people were up in arms about the school board in that county adopting critical race theory to teach the parents' children.
The Western culture and values that brought forth Christianity in the founding documents are being called evil and racist.
I'm reminded of the tyranny of communist China, where your money is legally stolen and then used in government schools, not public schools. These are not public schools, these are government schools, like here, to indoctrinate children against their parents.
My child is not oppressed, and don't assume that. As long as you Marxists push your unconstitutional agenda on my child, she will not be returning back to Loudoun County schools.
A black woman saying, I'm not going to have my kids taught critical race theory. And she called it what it is, Marxist. And, they also shut down about 90% of the people that wanted to talk at that meeting. There were 259 people at that meeting who had signed up to talk, and they shut it off after like 24 because they were all people who were outraged. It's disgraceful, and the people of Loudoun County, Virginia, have become ground zero for this battle.
Well, I am one of the people of Loudoun County, Virginia, as a matter of fact, Tim, and I've been in that room for various hearings, both as a participant, a resident, and also as a reporter for LibertyNation.com on some gun control matters, among others. And they do have a fondness for cutting off debate when it gets heated and directed in a manner that opposes those in power. So I'm familiar with that quite a bit. For my bonehead of the week, I chose Lori Lightfoot, Chicago's intrepid mayor, and her comments about crime in the city of Chicago.
Whole world's watching video from Humboldt Park this past weekend. 2 people in a minor car accident suddenly swarmed and shot execution style the latest victims of Chicago's worst violence in years. Mayor Lightfoot, though, is taking credit for slowing down the rate of increase.
Now, I'm the first to tell you that's cold comfort to a single person who's been shot, a single person who's been killed.
In fact, City Hall's own website shows murders so far in 2021 are up 5% over last year and up an astounding 29% over the year before that. The director of the mayor's Office of Violence Reduction joined a police news conference to praise Lightfoot's strategy of mobilizing resources beyond police alone.
We are very encouraged by the progress that we've seen so far this year. This year we've employed an all-city and all-government response. So that includes involving city departments, streets and sands, BACP, et cetera, libraries, parks, but also community-based organizations as well.
So it's a big surprise out of the Windy City that the mayor's chief of police has applauded her efforts to reduce crime. I don't think anybody saw that coming. She's a bonehead because instead of saying, hey, we've got a nationwide murder epidemic and we're doing the best we can, but it's everywhere, it's not just Chicago, which is a good politician's answer. False, but a good politician's answer, I think. She's touted her own bona fides as some kind of reducer of murders just because there would be more if she weren't in office. There's the greatest television show depicting criminals and police is The Wire. And there's a great scene in it where they're basically, the police captains are told to reduce crime so that the numbers are better for the politicians' reelection campaigns. And one of the district commanders says, I can make a felony into a misdemeanor, but you want me to hide bodies? How do I do something with a killing? So homicide statistics have always been the gold standard of statistics for policing in cities because you can't hide the body. They can juke all the numbers they want with those other crimes. But what the homicide statistics tell us is that they're doing a horrible job. And for pointing that out to those of us who understand those stats, that's a bonehead move for Lightfoot.
Well, it seems like Lori Lightfoot is basically answering the question, when did you stop beating your wife? Because it's, we have a murderous rampage in our city. It's been going on for years, but we think we're doing pretty well and we're not going to ignore it anymore. Is that basically what she's saying?
I think basically she's not even telling the truth. I don't know what she's doing.
We know
with her
that.
numbers. I don't know what she's doing with her numbers, but that's not exactly what I saw. And coming from a place within travel, a couple hours travel distance to Chicago, and that used to be the hub for all of us for concerts and nightlife and things like that. Ain't nobody going. Nobody that I know will go back to Chicago.
She might have been able to make that boast maybe 2 years ago, because before 2020, crime was actually going down in Chicago. However, in 2020 and where it's trending for 2021, it's not looking so good. She doesn't have anything to boast about. What she should be talking about, if she wanted to be honest, is, hey, crime went up. Here's what we're going to do to get it back down. But she didn't.
Why didn't she just say, hey, crime went up because of Donald Trump? That's what everybody else is doing. I mean, blame it on him. He's the catch-all, isn't he?
No, according to Lori Lightfoot, crime goes up because there are guns in America. But anyway, it's just...
Somehow white supremacy and guns are always involved, I'm sure.
Yeah.
True.
Well, finally, I'm going to go with mine. I apologize in advance for going back to the watering hole on this one, but Joe Scarborough makes it so easy to come up with a boneheaded comment. I listened to Morning Joe for about 60 seconds and caught this little ditty. And quite frankly, I find it mouth-dropping. Hit it, Frankie.
I've really been taken by progressives and the restraint they've shown, the discipline they've shown in negotiating. I say these are people that are acting like they actually want to govern, know how to govern, and they've sort of stood back and let everybody talk about Manchin. They're choosing their shots, but President Obama, Stacey Abrams coming out and supporting voter ID, supporting purging the rolls every few years. That's really significant stuff, isn't it?
Okay, Jeff, I saw your face while this was going, so go ahead, let it rip.
There's a word that Senator Chuck Schumer got in trouble for using. I'm not going to say it, but that's what popped in my head when I just heard that. And to me, it's like the progressive wing has not been restrained. They've been whining this whole time. They've been bashing Biden and the moderates over the past few years. So yeah, they're weighing in on Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin because they want this radical agenda to go through. Now, I'm sure that there are someone in the socialist wing that wishes it would go further. At the same time, they're not being really silent about this.
It's amazing how many conservatives turned into leftists during the Trump years. Joe Scarborough was a conservative congressman from Florida. Now he's a voice for the left because of his personal hatred for Donald Trump. Now he's defending progressives.
I don't think you're 100% right there about his personal hatred, Tim. It also has to do with what dinner parties he gets to get invited to.
Okay.
If he maintained his pro-Trump status, those invites would have gone way downhill.
Okay, you're right. My mistake.
I mean, the guy is basically opposing voter ID because, he wants to get a free steak. I mean, I don't see why he even has a show anymore. It's absurd.
He's a joke. He's a joke. Morning joke.
All right. So we've run out of time to vote this week, but hopefully you'll tell us your pick on our comments section. No. And thank you.
Easy choice, folks. Easy choice.
We will award the winner with something grand and tell you about it next week. Thanks for joining us. Remember, there's nothing more boneheaded than our current political climate. So remember to hop on over to libertynation.com for a little bit of sanity each day. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all our TV productions. Thanks so much for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our new member zone, just $29.99 for the entire year. This has been a production of libertynation.com, conservative news where truth matters.